Welcome back to the Poor Sports Podcast. You'll notice that the co-host has gotten significantly less good-looking since last episode.
You've really let yourself down. I agree. I don't know what happened.
Obviously not Alex Akita across from me on the screen. My friend Andrew Rivers, friend/enemy. At different times in our paths. I don't know if you seem hurt by that a little bit, or
I think that's perceived.
confused.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly understand needing a nemesis to motivate yourself, and I've created a few in my head as well. But I don't think we ever had any official problems.
No, I would say the closest thing we had to a problem was you were and we've talked about this a bunch, but you were a judge on a comedy contest that I did.
Yes.
And you eliminated me, and the excuse you gave was maybe the easiest letdown, because the guy and I both had very good sets for the time anyway. And you said you're already getting opportunities at this club. This might mean more to him, which was like the affirmative action of putting a different white guy through in this comedy competition. And so
he was a little person, wasn't he? Or
he was not a little person. He was not a little. He actually is the guy. He did the artwork for my. Nobody Likes Casey, or the first iteration of what used to be called like the Casey McLean show. He did that. I had a 25-minute EP I put on YouTube. He did the artwork for that.
You took your enemy and you hired him.
Yeah, I forced him to work under me. That's
keep him under your thumb. Absolutely, the best way to rule.
His name is Jay Sierra, which he's like off the face of the earth.
Oh yeah, he like quit. He was like in a band and stuff too, and promising individual. And I mean, obviously, I was wrong. Look at your career that has blossomed.
What a blossoming career! Yeah, we're just a straight line up, a hockey stick to success. He was I liked him. He and I were friends before that, and I was happy to see him do well. I was not happy, but the biggest beef we had is that my mom, probably to this day, she was in the crowd, holds that against you. She's like, Andrew Rivers, the guy that eliminated you, why would you spend time with him?
Wow. Yeah. All right. Well, I've tried to make it up to your mom, but she stopped answering my calls, so I don't know what to do about that.
And then also, before we get too far along, most of the listeners to this are in the Pacific Northwest. Andrew is at Tacoma Comedy Club July 5th and 6th.
Yeah, baby.
Two shows each night. I'm going to try to make an appearance on one of the shows. If only to hurt the feelings of another friend of ours, and not let him do
another perceived enemy that, yeah.
And then you just put out a special called Hello Beautiful, which is, by the way, Hello Beautiful is a funny name. Is it, I've watched like all of the act, and I watched most of the special, but did you ever address, you say Hello Beautiful to everybody, right? Like that's
Yeah, I do. It's the closing bit, so I know you didn't make it all the way through.
Yeah,
but, I mean, I don't blame you. So
I have seen. I couldn't remember
because the whole act in pieces and
in every form. Yeah, and I will say I will watch it all the way through. The day that it came out was my birthday, and I watched a chunk of it. The biggest chunk of it of time I watched was sitting on the toilet. And I commented on it and then got nothing, or I didn't check back to see if I got anything. I commented, you were talking about drugs at that point in the premiere, and I was like, no, Andrew is a serious drug addict. Yeah.
I see, yeah.
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, I heart every comment. I during the live premiere, too, I don't know. I mean, I tried to...
I don't know if... I actually don't know if you saw it, nor did I actually check back. I was just...
Sure.
I saw our mutual friend Scott Lossy. You were interacting with Scott Lossy on a regular basis, but I throw a comment.
He was at the room. He was in the room even. So we
with
had
you?
like a live party.
Oh, that's right. You did it at the same place as you recorded it, Comedy Bar in Seattle.
Yeah. So yeah, we for the filming we packed out 2 shows, over 100 tickets each, and then 1 year later for the release, we had about 20 people. So, it was a Tuesday night and it was free tickets, but it's hard to like promote something that is like so self-serving. We have that constant fight of like, everybody look at me, but not in a creepy way, like,
yeah.
I want attention, but I want to earn it and deserve it, but also like, I do. So
but also I do, and you haven't realized it yet. Yeah, no, that's Comedy, I think that's like a thing that I respect about you is comedians of all types, no matter what like our actual background is, we all want to be too punk rock, I think. And effort looks so unattractive. And you ever hear about those? There's like punk bands that will like do some goofy thing, like they never record an album. You have to see them live. That's the only thing. Or they make their name like in the modern like the modern world with search engines, they make their name like Live Nude Girls or something like that. And so it's like impossible to find them. You have to be like a super hipster to find them. We all want to be that type of artist, and then we're like, oh shit, there's no views, nobody bought tickets, I suck. And then you're like, okay, well I'll sell out. I'll do
I think
like
Cal
incremental
Kinane
sellouts.
sort of had that moniker or that reputation for a while as like this underground punk, but he was still putting out albums, and he was like the voice of Comedy Central, and like
Of course.
he was pretty popular by its own. But
He
yeah,
was
so
beloved.
that is and
was selling tickets all over the
deservedly
place.
so. Great comedian. So, but
One of my,
we all hope to be the man of the people, and
Yeah.
and we'll settle for the lady of somebody.
I'm gonna address a couple of these. We got a couple comments here. Nick Lindsay is our official timekeeper. Not a Thursday, nor at 3 p.m. Let me tell you something, Nick Lindsay. We didn't even do a podcast last week because my co-host and I both have children, and I had my daughter's first birthday. And we have. I grew up with a lot of. An influence on my life was a Salvadorian family that I grew up with, and they do a party like a first birthday party is no different than a 40th birthday party. Like it's for the adults, right? Like they're drinking the same amount for a first birthday party as a 40th birthday party, and so we threw a pretty good sized party. And last Thursday, I was just too busy, and then this week, not only Alex has he also had a norovirus last week, which might be a HIPAA violation that I'm letting you know that. But he also just didn't want to do the podcast this week. So if you want a fucking podcast, this is the one you get. He didn't want to do the podcast itis this week. And
I didn't want to do the podcast either, but
I know. You owe me so many favors, and only so many can be paid sexually. And also, by the way, this Thursday at 3 p.m., you should be cracking into a light lager and trying to yell at your neighbors for shooting off fireworks, probably. And then Janae Content. Always wondered if she goes content or content, like content. I almost went into a. Anyways, big time comedy fan somehow also knows Alex, but she's got to know you. You got to know Janae over the years, right?
They are all nameless little
Wow.
bubbles on my Facebook, and
Wow.
I try not to develop a personal relationship with anybody.
Wow. Janae was like when I first started comedy, would come to the comedy club a lot. Janae, where do you live now? Like I thought it was like Denver or something like that, or maybe you're. For some reason, I thought that, but yeah, this is Andrew Rivers, who's potentially a future baby's dad of yours at some point. Who knows?
We're holding a contest for that later.
And Puyallup Coog says, "Holy shit, Alex grew his hair out and got white." I don't expect that you're aware of this podcast, Andrew, but do you know my podcast co-host Alex Akita? Are you familiar with him?
No.
Alex SSN on social media. You probably follow him.
Oh, I probably follow him on social media. Yeah.
Yeah, he is half Japanese, although nobody knows this until because he doesn't put his name on everything. And so our mutual friend Brent James Driscoll was like, why do I see two fat Burt Kreischers on the screen? And I was like, you're racist, dude. That is so racist. This guy's Japanese. He's one half Japanese, so we are a 1/4 Japanese podcast.
Well, I am. I have been in a Japanese woman, so I feel like that counts.
I don't think that counts at all. In fact, I think that lady should call into the podcast and we can discuss this because that can't have been any good for her. All right, so I want to talk about some sports topics a little bit. I did see you this weekend, which was nice. That's what reminded me that you know about sports, is just seeing you at the Puyallup Fair, watching me absolutely destroy at the Puyallup Fair like everybody else did. I destroyed at the Puyallup Fair, being completely
You had a
clean.
really good first 10 minutes, and then I don't know what happened after that. But
There was a stretch in after that was okay, but it was like What happened was I made a calculation. So my kids were in the audience. I have a title joke of my soon to be released special about shaking children, shaking babies. And I think I lost them at the shaking babies. And then at one point, I noticed this too. I was very happy to see it at the comic that went up after me show also. But at some point towards the end of the show, people just started filing out. Like it was like 10 people or something like that, and out of a crowd of like 60 maybe. But it's a free show at the fair. They can feel it winding down. They're not enjoying themselves. They feel no pressure to stay. They have no bill to pay. And so, yeah, unfortunately, yeah, it was like,
It
it
is
was rough.
tough when it happens right after a joke or something. You're like,
Yeah.
that was the one, like that.
Yeah, I
You
know.
know, you just want to interview them and do like an exit poll, be like, what? And it's probably not. They're like, oh, the corn dogs are bad. I gotta go shit in the outhouse or whatever.
Yeah.
But you're taking it so personally. Monica Nevi went up, and I think as soon as she said she was gay, a couple people walked out. And so I was like, wow, we can't. You're like, we can't say fuck or whatever at the, but if you say gay, people are just like, well, this I have never. And you're like, it's Pride Month or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
Okay,
There's also
you know.
there's also a part of it that I think people don't realize when you're on stage where like I'll comment on something not going well because it's funny to comment on it not going well, not because I'm
Yeah.
like being crushed by the weight of the show, and then people come up to you after, they're like,
Yeah.
dude, I was laughing so hard, I really liked it. I'm like, no, I know.
Right.
I was like, that was the point. It's how like,
well, it's
and-
just, it's weird feeling up there because you see them laughing kind of, and you see
Yeah.
them moving or smiling or whatever, but you know, the noise never makes it to you really.
Yeah, I also noticed
And-
because I was sitting on the like the rim of the like the edge of the tent when the comic went up after me, which I'm not saying her name, not Rachel Afjay, she did fine.
Yeah, yeah.
But I just like I could tell people were laughing, but
Yes.
from there you just don't hear it very well.
Yes.
And like from the stage you hear it better. It
Yes.
sounds better than from the very back. Yeah, it was. And this is all me justifying a mediocre performance that I think we all
you
had, by
know,
the way.
Boy, Thursday ended up being the best show for me, and everyone was like, "Oh, it's gonna get so much better during the week," and I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." And it was funny because Adam was there, who owns the comedy club and sort of is our boss at this. We're representing his business at this fair, you know. So there's a little more pressure,
Yeah.
and so he was kind of talking to me like, how much new stuff are you gonna do tonight? And I was like, whoa, I was gonna do like some greatest hits here, but then I went up and then all my new stuff killed, and it was like the opposite effect where like the first 10 minutes was like a struggle, and then
Yeah.
the last 20 was like so good. It was like a regular show almost, except you're going 2 times the speed. But
Well, I had an experience that I've grown used to over the years last year because
bombing, yeah. I mean, you've grown used to that for.
So I went up. My daughter was born June 24th, and this happened like one day later this year. So it was like 6 days after she was born or something like that. Was my first show back. It was the only thing on my calendar after her. It was like before her due date still, and because she was born early. But anyways, I go to that show. It's like fine. I drove Mary Santora there. She did fine. I think neither of us were like thrilled, but we're both like, we had seen Harry J. Riley, a friend of ours, do like not like, fine, whatever, same quality. Like no, there wasn't like a big gap between either of our performances. And we're like, yeah, it's just a tough place to perform.
Yeah.
Next up after Mary is one Gabriel Rutledge.
Oh, boy.
Goes up first off. Gabe dirtier than any 3 of us, by the way.
Yeah.
But also just I've had that experience multiple times with him where I'm like, that room sucks. No one can get that room. And then within moments he's crushing, and I'm like, oh well, I guess I fucking suck, and it wasn't the room's fault.
Yeah, I mean, his special is going crazy right now, and I'm sure you've had that experience just as a regular opener with him, where you're like, well, this is impossible.
Yeah.
And then so I've had a couple of those experiences just watching him because I'm just a fan, and so I've been joking now that I'm like, oh, all you have to do to get your special to 1 million views is crush for 90 minutes straight. Like, oh, it's with perfectly relatable material. Like, oh, it's so easy, like we should all just do that.
Yeah, just
And then
incredibly
the
well written
other,
jokes and charisma and
right.
yeah.
And then the other thing is, like, my dad is a big fan of his too, so we go see him in Vegas. If ever the timing lines up, and we've seen him a couple times now at the Comedy Cellar, and it's like some people go in and they act too cool, or they like don't even they kind of like half try, and like what I've respected about Gabe is no matter if it's like a Monday night and it's 9 p.m. and he's like really trying to kill. And
Yeah.
I was talking to him like, thanks for not ever like phoning it in or trying to act like you're above this. And he was like, I think that's why they make me close, because no one else gives a shit. And
Yeah.
he'll kill every time. So
Well, that's got to be one of the biggest honors in the world, to be forced to close at the Comedy Cellar. It's like, they're like, oh, sorry, nobody can follow you at
yeah,
the
nobody,
Comedy
yeah,
Cellar.
yeah.
All right,
They
that's
all-
enough.
Well, he still makes a salary from a live performance, so he gives it the old college try. But these other guys, they're like actors, and they're like,
Sure.
whatever. They don't have to necessarily. They're just hanging out for fun. And then I'm like, give those opportunities to me. I'll try.
Yeah,
and
I'll
they're
try
like, well,
so
you're
hard. I'll try
not
so
good.
hard. Okay, well, I want to talk to you about a couple things,
All right.
sports related, because there's a bunch of sports news that I didn't get to talk about with my pal Alex Akita. But first off, you and I have about the same like year range of hip hop taste. I think probably a couple different artists.
We're
like,
the same age.
yeah,
think.
so I suspect that you like Drake more than I do. Maybe not as of recently, but I don't.
I'm Kendrick in the streets and Drake in the sheets. Just a joke that has bombed many times on stage, but
Well, I gave it a
for-
fake
for a
laugh, so it
podcast
counts.
with you, that's all I need.
Well, then I do want to point out Puyallup Coog / Bend Coog, who's in he lives in Bend. He saw me in Prineville. He said still counts, and this was in reference to Alex Akita being 1/4 Japanese. And he operates on the one drop rule of race. So that's, hey, whatever you're doing out there in Bend, I guess. I don't know. Then stay away from P
This Bend
cities.
guy is really concerned about purity of people's races. Is
I
that what
know.
you're trying to get across? Yeah.
Yeah. Also, by the way, he said stay away from P cities, Puyallup, Prineville. He saw another show where I did like 20 very good minutes and then really lost them, probably about the same point. And so in Prineville, Oregon. Normally those cities are like really in my wheelhouse, like a rowdy, like a rowdy red city in a blue state.
Yeah.
That's my fucking jam, and vice versa. But anyway, so there's this show that you're probably aware of. I suspect you don't watch. You probably watch it about as frequently as I do, which is the It Is What It Is, Cameron's show with Mace and Stat
I've
Baby.
seen the highlights. I've never sat down to watch it, but yeah.
Sure. So I have basically never seen a full episode. I will admit to that. I've seen.
I watch
that-
it like I watch your comedy special, just
perfect,
whatever clip
perfect.
make it to me.
Whatever clip they force down my throat, the algorithm forces down my throat. I'm not close enough to my phone to turn it off. Yeah, that's what I get. Anyway, he does his podcast, and I noticed this thing that he did, and I did a little research on it, and I realized it's a once a season thing, or maybe a couple times a season thing, but it's the way he came into the podcast, and I didn't realize it was like a thing that they do all the time. I thought he just decided this was the day he was going to do it. And I think I found the coolest way to come into a podcast. I'm going to try to make this, we'll make this a little bit better. We're going to go a little technological here, and we'll bring it over here. So this is him entering the podcast. Imagine if I entered a podcast in this way, and tell me if you can hear this. Can you hear it?
Yeah, she a funny nigga, man. Here come my ex with all the ruckus, saying she want me back. Look, dub it, I'm out your budget. Step back, put down my bucket. I told her switch up the subject. You shoulda appreciated your pussy more when I loved it. I mean, I was ready to lick it, stick it, then fucking. Now fuck it. What you do, you gave it away to the public. Now listen, I ain't Mathis, I ain't one to judge it, but girl, carry on, I carry on. I don't do luggage, I'm gone. She don't understand. Show me your underwear. Look, you like Six Flags. I come by once a year. Maybe take a ride. Besides that, I don't fucking care. Let's be fucking clear.
All right, you get it. The point is that has got to be the absolute coolest way to start a podcast. And I'm so mad that he thought of it first. Cameron getting to the idea of
It's not too late. You can start a freestyle.
all right, let's give me
We
no,
would
I'm
lose
not doing
all
it.
listeners that we have, but
Have you so you've consumed parts of that podcast. My favorite thing about that podcast is how those dudes are just like, I feel like we got missed with pause as a joke. Like we can't, especially in the Pacific Northwest, we can't do the pause joke. And man, what a fun time they're having saying pause.
yeah,
The
I
only
go back
word
and
two
forth.
black dudes from the East Coast can say that we can't say is pause.
that's the main one. That's the one you say
That's
the
the
other
one-
one all the time. So
We got there. We got to the joke.
good. We should have paused and thought it out. But
Even like Sam J had that show called Pause, which is like such a perfect show for like a hip hop black lesbian to have.
Yeah.
A perfect name for a show, Pause. I watched about as much of that as I watched of your special, but the name was great.
It's kind of like it's like a wordplay thing, and it's kind of clever. But I listen to Joe Budden, and they do it all the time, and it kind of gets annoying after a while because they say it after the most innocuous
Sure.
comment. You know, they're like, "Oh, bend over and pick that up, pause," or whatever, and now they're saying like "no Diddy" and "no homo." You know, it used to be like all these things.
Yeah, I guess the like white dude version of that for a while was "That's What She Said." That's like essentially the equivalent.
We have to take it. I was gonna say we have to take it and make it positive.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that was the other one. Was not that there's anything wrong with that from Seinfeld. That's actually saying it's
Right.
Yeah, that's anyways, okay, well we can move on from that.
I
I didn't think anyone else would have I don't think Alex would have appreciated this because he probably couldn't like pick Cameron out of a lineup. And I know my hip hop
out
taste
of the lineup. What kind of
Take it
racist
easy.
statement is that? Why would he be in a police
take
lineup?
it easy. I didn't say police lineup. He could be in a baseball lineup. I don't know why you're
Oh,
taking
why
it
is
to
he
the
in a
fucking police
baseball
station, Alex. Why wouldn't he be in a baseball lineup? What do you think? Okay. Uh
Because he's not white. Oh,
my hip hop taste spans from Jay-Z, Volume 2 to like third album Kanye is about where it ends. And now there's like a couple people who've broken through. I like Kendrick. I like Lil Dicky. That might be it actually. But there's like a couple people that have broken through, but this is like Cameron is like right in my wheelhouse. And it's so cool to see these dudes. Mace was like, I wasn't a big Mace guy, but he was in that period of time. It's so cool to see these guys like still doing stuff in their 40s and 50s. How old is Cameron? Cameron's got to be like close to 50 years old.
yeah. I mean, we got a lot of old rappers. You know.
Yeah.
Like, it's cool to see that happening because
48 years old, Cameron.
yeah. Because now Snoop Dogg's like, I'm not throwing gang signs. I have arthritis. You know, like, oh, I always thought he should get a CBD sponsorship and just
That's
start
amazing.
raking in the cash.
Topical Snoop Dogg CBD. Wow. That's amazing that he hasn't done that. I can't believe you should pitch that to him for 10% of the royalties.
I don't know how to, his people won't get near me, but
Well, you have a potentially an in, and I want to talk about that too because Bronny James got drafted by the Los Angeles Lakers in the second
my
round. And
best friend. Yeah.
What I think we've learned about Bronny James in the last week or two is that no team is going to draft Bronny James. If the Lakers felt comfortable enough to let him fall to nearly the end of the second round, it meant nobody was going to draft Bronny James. Bronny James is the face of nepotism in the NBA. And you, being the son of
Face of
Bob
nepotism.
Rivers, you are the face of nepotism in Seattle entertainment. You, the son of who immediately was handed a platform of your dad's very popular radio show. I also, by the way, I didn't know this about your dad, I guess. I feel this way, and I'm going to compare your dad to Ken Griffey Jr., so hold on. I didn't know how popular your dad was, like, nationwide. I knew he was huge in Seattle, and I felt that way about Ken Griffey Jr., too. I have, like, a friend from Kansas City that moved out to Tacoma, and he's like, yeah, my favorite baseball player growing up was Ken Griffey Jr. Everybody's favorite baseball player was Ken Griffey Jr., and I was like, oh, that was true here. I didn't realize it was true in, like, Kansas or in Boston or whatever. And
This is why you bomb in Bend, Oregon. You need to get out of your liberal bubble, you know?
That's right. Go to Bend, Oregon. Where, But your dad, like Joe List, a guy you and I have both worked with, he was like, yeah, dude, his dad was huge. I remember listening to his songs because they don't even know. A lot of them don't even know your dad is like a radio DJ. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, he did the Christmas songs, the like parody Christmas songs.
A lot of his songs went out and weren't credited really because they would
Oh, wow.
they would sort of get stolen by different radio stations or replayed by different stations or whatever. And
Sure.
someone might say like, "Hey, that's Bob Rivers," and someone would be like, "Weird Al sounds different," you know?
Yeah.
Like there was one guy sort of dominating parody space, and there was a guy like Dr. Dement, I think was the Midwest version, but like none of his songs ever. So like he got, and when the internet sort of first went out there, as much as he tried to be on the forefront of it, and he had like a streaming website for a while, and it's just hard to control that. So like a lot of people know his songs, don't necessarily know the name.
Yeah.
And
how
you know,
how big do you think he would be in 2024 where like that shit would just go viral on YouTube?
we
And
try. I mean, we've like tried to make music videos and like animated cartoons and stuff.
Sure.
And he just, I don't know. He doesn't have the reach necessarily. I mean, again, it's what we're all fighting for too. And it's fun to hear my dad complain about stuff like that too, where he kind of misses the spotlight or,
yeah.
you know, or it's not even like, I mean, I'm sure some of it is ego, but a lot of it is like, how do I let my legacy live on, you know? And just because,
Well, as the
you
as
know,
the face of
growing up as
nepotism,
like a,
what is your
yeah.
advice for Bronny James? That's the real question.
I mean, I think
He's not
his
gonna have to sleep in
inheritance
his
is
car.
much bigger than mine, so he's gonna be okay. That's got to be a whole different. I mean, like, you know, I don't think he's gonna. I don't think he's gonna go anywhere without people knowing who his dad. You know, I still have a level of anonymity.
Sure.
In fact, like a guy at the show, I think Thursday or Friday, came up to me and he was like, "Dude, I had no idea who your dad was until you brought it up, and then I Googled it, and then I missed." I made a Boeing joke later, and then all of his buddies were like, "He works at Boeing," and then he had no idea what was happening because he was reading about my dad during the show.
Oh, that's so funny.
And I was like, "That's how cool my dad is. Is you're more interested in him in the middle of my show."
Well, yeah, that it is. It's also interesting how quickly that stuff goes away because your dad was enormous, like one of the.
Yeah.
I mean, just like
I mean,
nationwide.
he's still it. Like every show, someone brings it up. They, "Oh, we miss your dad," and I go, "He
Sure.
has a podcast," but they don't even know how to like, you know, he's got a Facebook page that's like bigger than mine, I think, and like, he never posts anything. But even if
Yeah.
he every time he talks about it, he's like, "Facebook doesn't show my post to anybody anymore," and I'm like, "Hey, brother, we're in the same league here, you know."
Yeah.
So
Well, I got to imagine you don't even really get accused of nepotism by many people especially because I think your dad like moved to more older demographics of radio stations. So like the people who are like under 30 that do comedy,
yeah.
I'll be like, yeah, you know, he's Andrew. I'm like always shitting on you behind
Yeah.
your back. I'm like, you know, he's just fucking Bob Rivers' son. And they're like, yeah, I don't know who that is. Sorry.
Yeah.
If you're over 40, you're
Well,
like Bob Rivers,
yeah.
the Bob Rivers. And if you're under
Yeah.
30, they're like, yeah, I don't know who that is.
He quit radio just as I was like featuring at comedy clubs, and
Sure.
so like you know, like my first couple years in comedy, people were like trying to accuse me of some, and I'm like, yeah, my dad's not getting me Triple Run bookings like in Idaho, you know. So now what I learned is that people were maybe taking me on these things to gain influence to maybe be on my dad's show or whatever, which is
Sure.
fine, which is like cool, you know, like you know, a lot of people ended up becoming good friends, and you know,
I don't
but it
begrudge you for
also
that.
wasn't
I will say that
super
because it's like,
effective, you know,
it's
it's
also
like
it's so-
advertising like an open mic comedian being like, "I'm hosting at Laughs Comedy Spot all weekend," and then people are like, "We're not gonna come see this," you know.
we're going to
like-
see 7 minutes of the son of a guy we like.
yeah, so like it wasn't that. If I get it a lot now because I'm actually good. So like when
Sure.
people see a
So
show,
they say.
well, you know, it's up to anyone's opinion. If you saw me at the fair, we disagree, but but I get it, So it just is like people kind of accidentally see me, or now, because of advertising in the name. Sometimes I see on the Facebook comments like, "Oh, his dad is great, so I'm sure this show is pretty good," or some version of that, and you're like, "I hope this works," But I notice it's like, if I'm in the Northwest, it's like 20% people that just knew him.
Yeah.
And heard me on the come up, because I would come in there once a week at like the very early stages and be like, it was like another open mic for me. So I would just test out jokes. And so now that, they kind of skipped my ugly years, it pays off in the long run.
Nobody agrees with that.
Yeah. Well,
we got a question from Ben/Puyallup Coog. Did Andrew Rivers go to Seattle U? Which I'm not trying to be fucking morning radio with a comedian, but you do have a joke that addresses this.
I go to school in every city I ever went to. So I went to University of Phoenix online. I went to Art Institute of Seattle, if people want the real answer. But
for what?
I wrote this video production.
Gotcha.
It was an interesting time because technology just changed. We were like learning beta tapes, and then they're like, all of a sudden you can get a laptop with Final Cut Pro, and we're like, what the hell? And then that school went out of business because it was a scam. But
did it actually go out of business? The Art Institute of Seattle went out of business?
I think the whole chain of art institutes went out of business.
Wow.
Yeah.
My cousin was a professor at the Art Institute of Seattle in the culinary department, so I'm gonna let him know that he's a big fucking scam artist.
Yeah, well,
that's it, Dan. You're not getting one past me again.
Yeah,
no, I have no doubt.
Anyway, I wrote this joke about. It just became an opening joke to get a 10-second laugh where I go, "Good to be in Phoenix. I went to school here, University of Phoenix, online or whatever." Which there's these tropes or whatever you call them in comedy that like.
It is funny that in the example you went with Phoenix.
Yeah, well, that's where I wrote it, and
I
then I was like, I wonder if I can do this everywhere. But there are just these weird things in comedy where, like, if you just say a statement in a certain way, people like clap and like, just a little bit about me, or like, just like these weird sentences. So it just felt.
I'm not trying to break down joke structure, but that is like a. I'm saying I'm not, but that is a misdirect. Like it is.
Yeah.
You took that as me like telling you this. By the way, this was a comment from Linder Seattle to me. Linder, by the way, is Linda from Boston. 20 very good minutes. Title for your next 45-minute special. Yes, that's a great title, Linder. I appreciate it. Oh, I'm gonna.
Are they dissing you or me or both of us?
Oh, it's me. It was me talking about how. By the way, the real thing that killed me is not only did it start to not go great on my established material, but I also threw 5 new minutes in the middle of my set that was like, my wife was like, yeah, that first part was no good. The last line was funny, but the rest of it like really was not funny. And I'm like, it's one of those ones where you're like, I just wish you could. It was also like my kids were in the crowd seeing me for the first time. All I wanted was for it to not go bad enough for my oldest daughter to be like, why are you doing that instead of spending time with us?
She's like, I got to get a job at the meat plant pretty soon. This is not working out well for Daddy.
Someone needs to help Mom pay rent. You got to take on this Caitlin Clark lady. It seems like she's like a take factory.
She's pretty good at basketball.
She's really good at basketball.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all you got.
Her entertainment value is good for the league, and the attention. Whether every foul is a personal foul or should we assault charges or whatever. Like, I get that the league is trying to make noise and money for the first time in their existence. So
yeah,
whatever they got to do.
I want to run a theory by you because Alex always cuts me off when we start talking about the WNBA because he's an enormous sexist, and I have this theory my theory is that most WNBA fans, or maybe not most, but a larger segment of WNBA fans are like single sport fans or fans of specifically like women's professional sports, which do not have as big of a following as men's professional sports. We can agree on that. I think there's a segment of people who are fans of everything, and they like, I have like as an old man, you start to get into the thing. You would never know about this. You're so young and virile, but as an old man, you're like, I just like seeing
Viral.
people. You wish.
Not talking about my Instagram. My
Yeah,
man.
not the algorithm, baby. The test results you received earlier today. But where you're just like, I like seeing greatness. I like seeing people compete. Like I'll watch like a playoff game or whatever and just be like, wow, that's really cool to see. Like I started to really like Tom Brady at the end of his career, even though you're not supposed to as a Seahawks fan, because it was like, why would I just hate watching the best player to ever play? I felt that way about Michael Jordan at the end of his career, although he was a little easier. He was like the Griffey of basketball. Where it was like you kind of just were like, God, this guy's amazing. Like and I feel that way a little bit about Caitlin Clark, where it's like she's changing the way the game looks.
Yeah.
And you'll watch like Angel Reese, who, by the way, like I like Angel Reese too. I think that is like a perfect like Magic versus Bird, and people want to get mad at that analogy.
People need a bad guy. I
Yeah.
mean, she has AIDS for sure, but people need a villain, like I was your comedy villain for 6 months or whatever, and people need like this good versus evil story that they can root for whoever.
But so the reaction to the
Let's see
anger,
Angel Reese solve the North Korea problem. I'd like to see that.
Yeah,
before
come
we
on.
start crowning her.
before she's the Dennis Rodman of the WNBA, like get over there and talk to Kim Jong-un, lady. But I think if you even watch those two women play, you see that like Caitlin Clark just looks different playing basketball. Like she's playing a more modern version of basketball, and it's a faster paced, like a more like she's putting up shots. She goes from dribbling to shooting faster than any woman in the WNBA is my prediction. Like it's not to like she's Steph Curry-esque in that way. And I think that's like even like you see, I don't know if you've seen this, they've started to come out like 'cause she's got a high turnover average in each game. And you see some of the passes she's throwing, and these are like NBA fast break pass quality.
Yeah.
And her teammates are not handling the ball. And now it's like the whole league has to catch up to her. And eventually they will. Eventually playing with her and seeing her play, women across the league are going to see like ways that they can play basketball that they have not been previously, that they're physically capable of, but that nobody has, that nobody's pushed that limit yet. But also, I think a thing that's happening in the WNBA is that the WNBA has wanted, there's been like this moral outcry that if you don't watch women's sports, you're a piece of shit. But what they didn't factor in, or the fans of the WNBA did not factor in, is that the people that they were going to get as fans are the median sports fan, who is not someone who is activism-minded around women's sports. It's someone who's going to be critical of players on opposing teams and players on their own team and referees and all that shit. And it's just like, it's interesting to watch because it's gone from like summer camp to college basketball, or like summer camp to pro basketball. And it's great, by the way. Like, I think the NBA is going to benefit so much from how much they're being talked about right now is going to extend into the 2030s and 2040s. And that league, like, I think is more sustainable than it was before Caitlin Clark came around. But also, shut the fuck up and let it happen. Like, let it be controversial. Let it be something we care about. Because if you keep stripping away the controversy, we don't care about it as much.
Yeah. I went to my first WNBA game when Caitlin was in town, and it was fun. I was also very naive because I emailed the Storm like, "Hey, can I get on the video board or something? Like, I have a show in town, and like I'm headlining the Seattle Comedy Club." No response, and then I show up, and they're like, "It's the first sold-out game in history." Or you're like, "Oh, I see. Okay, I'm not the only one." They're like, "Tyler Lockett is here." I'm like, "Oh, they have real celebrities here. This is crazy." So
Dang. Have you? Was that your first? You said that was your first Storm game?
yeah, and it was fun, But also like some of it's to compare it to men's, what you're used to watching is wrong because they're better. They're some of the like you said, the technique's not as clean, but they also haven't been playing basketball. They haven't been allowed out of the kitchen for, until recently.
Jesus,
so,
Harrison Bucker. My God.
So, like, I'm saying it's a good thing,
You're saying it in the best way, too. Everyone's on your side on this. No, I kind of feel the same way. And
it hasn't been a real sport for that long, so it's gonna take them, like, the first, like, to compare the football evolution of, like, even 20 years ago when the guys were, baseball, the guys are smoking cigarettes in between the game and taking LSD and going out and throwing, no hitters. Like, oh, it's not that hard. You just throw the ball and nobody can hit it or whatever. So,
I basically agree with that, which is what I've said is it's to avoid falling into the pitfalls of comparing it to the men's game. I almost think we should view it as a different sport. Like, if you were like, how does this game look compared to football in whatever year they were into the NFL or whatever? The problem is we have this men's example where the dudes are 6'6" and they jump 40 inches and every man can dunk. And it's like, it's a different game. And I think Caitlin Clark, like, there's the proof is in the pudding, by the way. Like, it's hard to argue with at this point. Like, she's very popular to watch. She's selling out all over the place. The women's tournament ratings were really high. Like, it's happening. The thing you've been fighting
We're
for
in the middle
happening.
of a Rocky training montage, and everyone's bitching about it. And it's like, no, stop taking us out of the moment. Like, let us enjoy it,
Yeah, I fully agree, and it's you and I who deserve to finally enjoy something. Us, middle-aged white dudes finally get a chance to enjoy something. That's what I've always said.
I mean, these broads are walking into the stadium. They're getting they got the fashion show going on. They're wearing bikinis in the locker. You're like, this is a way to get men into sports. I tell you what.
I also thought, like, there's been a lot of stuff about they're like, I think it was Jamel Hill said that Caitlin Clark has prettiness privilege. And I want to be like,
she's not that hot.
Yeah. Angel Reese to me is significantly more attractive than Caitlin Clark. And also, by the way, like, I think she's way less fun to watch play basketball, but I agree with her on one point, which is I do think she plays a huge part in, I mean, it's the last 3 years, right? It's not just this WNBA season. It's the last 2 years of college. I mean, these are the two faces of the WNBA.
And by the way, Jamel Hill, her whole job is to say dumb shit. So, just let everybody do their job.
Fair.
And get attention and get their little clicks. And then,
Why is she trying to take our job?
I know.
The
that's
upsetting.
You know what? Everyone is taking our Jeremy Piven's taking your job, so
man, I got a story after the podcast. I had an encounter with the Piv dog.
You got me too? Oh man.
No, I wish I'd be significantly more further
along. That would be a story
encounter.
on the podcast for sure.
Okay, so finally we'll end on this, and we can go a while on it. We're trying to get to an hour. Try to stretch this out to an hour. I want to.
You spent 30 minutes not talking about sports, so I know.
Well, I was trying to stay in your knowledge base, and it was just bombing on stage. That's once we got outside of the realm of bombing on stage, you were going to be less of a contributor.
Well, I like to call my podcast "Reasonable Takes on Hot Button Issues," and nobody clicks on it. So,
we do play a game on the podcast that we call the home run game, and it's just you guess how many home runs a guy had in his career. And I think because you're here and you're not the level of spectrum, you don't fall in the same part of the spectrum as Alex, we could give you a couple rapid fire ones. You'll miss them by a lot, and it'll be fun.
I will miss a lot.
But so the Mariners are successful to a degree. They're presently in the middle of a little bit of a slide, but they are still ahead of the Astros, I think, by 3.5 games. Is that right?
We lost ground today. I don't know if it was 3.5 before today or after today, but
I think it was before
bad
today.
News. Yeah,
bad news. Let's make sure before we get too far into this that it's so this still says 3.5 games on Baseball Reference, but they must not have the Astros result in there. So 3 games, it's, some of the latest the Mariners have been in first place, or the longest they've been in first place since they've been a franchise. You and I have both watched. Oh, no, you know what? Let's talk about this in a moment. I have another topic to talk about that I forgot that you were a big fan of Pete Carroll's Win Forever. I know this about you. You and I have spent some time together. We had a Oklahoma City weekend. We had a long talk in the car that somebody filmed and then fucked up somehow, and we'll never see it again.
He offered you the footage, but he just didn't want to sit through it again. So
Yeah, well, yeah. No, he probably doesn't still have it, but he was like trying to get me to do editing for him for free. Mike Hansen says it's 3 games, so we're down to 3 games. But so anyways, Win Forever. I listened to that book. Man, I believe the Seahawks were like contending for a playoff spot pretty strong. Like maybe we're at the front runners for a playoff spot last year. I started listening to the book. Really loved it, by the way. I went through the whole audiobook in like 3 days in
good book.
fuck. I can't remember what city. I know I mean I can't remember what city it was. I very distinctly remember the gas station I finished it in the rental car in. But literally from that moment on, it felt like the Seahawks were on a downhill slide, and then Pete Carroll ends up getting fired. But talk to me about what you have gleaned out of that book and what you've how you've applied it to comedy, because you have in ways that I think, and this is a thing, by the way, that as I'm saying it, this sounds like a little fucking navel gazy and shitty. And what I like about you, one of the very few things that I like about you, is you are not embarrassed to look like a doofus on stuff like this. And it's effort. And effort is never attractive. It's never attractive to see someone trying hard. But part of what you did is listen to this book by a legendary football coach and somehow glean knowledge and process from it for your very important comedy career.
Man, I feel like I've said some smart things to you over the years, and now I've forgotten them all because.
I don't think you've said anything smart to me.
Well, I just mean about the book, or maybe I quoted some Pete Carroll stuff. A lot of it is just attitude, like the positivity thing. I think is one of the big things that I try to keep. Of thinking like something good is around the corner.
Sure.
And thinking negatively doesn't really help necessarily. If you do have those negative thoughts, try to act on them and go, try to fix it. And again, it's like the effort and the emotion. A lot of the robotic Russell Wilson things, I don't know how much that was Pete but I used to watch every press conference too, because Pete never said anything bad about he had these rules like protect the team. You're either on time, you're either early or you're late, or like simple things that you're like, as a player, like Marshawn Lynch, I've been lucky enough to hear a lot of inside stories of like, I was friends with John Ryan for a period and get to hear his stories of like, Marshawn would show up late to practice and he'd be, hungover. He'd be puking in the weight room. But then every day at the media, Pete Carroll's like, can't wait to get him out there. Love that guy, and just like the player, like the worst guy on the team, he would just have incredible things to say about. And again, it was like accentuating the positive attributes. He would always say like, we're looking at what a player can do, not what they can't do. And, so, again, the emotional side of like, try not to get too down and try not to get too excited. Because if you let your emotions lie to you in a way that you start fucking up. And so a lot of that is just what we've talked about too, where like pure effort and pure and I've tried to pass down a lot of knowledge as much as I can, and I've tried to share information with everybody. I've tried to send the elevator down to people if I can. I think a lot of
Not
that
me,
is
but other people.
Is in Pete Carroll's attitude. I think I've
Hey, you've been cool to me. I'm just joking.
Yeah.
It's just ball busting.
Yeah.
I do like this thing where you're like, you always have to be positive and never say something bad about someone, and then you're like one of the bigger ball busters in comedy.
I know. Well, again, that's part of my way of showing love too, is like, I think I'm uncomfortable in regular conversation a lot of times, so like I'm always trying to make some kind of a joke, or even if I'm like asking for a favor, I try to make a joke, or like people come up to you after the show and they want to like chat, and I'm just trying to make a joke because I'm like, I don't know what to say in regular conversation to people, and so I am a victim of I will get defensive sometimes when people and I go and Brandon the other night at the fair was trying to make fun of me, and he's like, because I was wearing a sweatshirt or something like that, and it was hot out, and he's like, what do you just not wear t-shirts? And I was like, well, I don't know, it just feels like you shouldn't wear a t-shirt on stage. And he's like, no, this is fucking with you, man. I go, yeah, I'm skinny. I don't need I need insulation. I don't know what to do. So but yeah, I do appreciate when people call me out, because I have to remember that that you're not trying to hurt my feelings,
Well, I am, but other people are not, certainly.
Sure, yeah. Well, I have to remember that I don't respect your opinion enough for it to hurt my feelings. So
that's fair. Okay, so the Mariners, they're like, we're approaching the trade deadline. So I've seen this thing talked about a lot, and I'm happy we talked about the Seahawks before, because I agree with this concept, which is the effect of winning a championship on the fan base is like enormous. And I will tell you, like, I'm a bigger baseball fan than I am a football fan, but I'm a bigger Seahawks fan than I am a Mariners fan, because they've made it so easy, because they've been really good. They won a championship. I mean, I have a picture.
Kept here for an extra, at least 5 years, probably.
Yeah.
Like there was 5 years where it was like, we got to move on from this guy, and it was like he knows how to win. We just got to get the right, And then it's like, we just got to recreate a once in a lifetime team. Like that's so easy. Like, why don't we all just be Gabriel Rutledge while we're at it? Like. The answer
it's also been really interesting to hear in the last couple of years, as most of that team has retired. I mean, all but now it's Bobby Wagner and Russell Wilson and none of them are with the team anymore. And hearing the like actual story from the locker room or whatever, and how like I thought it was really nice to hear Pete Carroll talk to like Richard Sherman, and they were both like, if we won that second one, we would have won a third one, no doubt. And it's like, fuck, that's kind of what we all felt. And it was like, And it like
I
they
still
talked
thought they were gonna win again. I honestly
I
was like, I don't see a reason that they can't get in there, and they almost did. Just there's so much luck in sports that we can't account, and it sucks because you're like, oh, the ball pointed and it bounced that way, and then you're like, well, what the who knows?
Yeah.
I'm sure the Packers feel that way looking at the game they lost to us in the playoffs. Like, how did we? This guy threw 5 interceptions and we didn't score more than 14 points. Like, how is this possible?
I know. And I think that so Mike Hansen says egos and contracts, and that's absolutely true. And I think the thing about that is so one, absolutely right. I think that winning a second championship kind of suppresses both those things, because I think Richard Sherman might do something, like the Legion of Boom guys might do something to all stay in Seattle. Their egos might not be as allowed to go wild if the guy that's trying to tame them has just taken them to 2 Super Bowl victories. I'll defend the decision to pass at the 1 yard line for the rest of my life, but it is like pretty obvious. The decision was good. The outcome was obviously very bad. And if that outcome was different, if the ball bounces a different way, you're relying on the bounce of an oblong ball, like if the ball bounces a different way, it's a different history for the Seahawks. And it's probably honestly like a different history for the Patriots. Not to say that the Seahawks overtake the Patriots. I don't think there's any way that happens, but it might spell the end of Tom Brady in New England faster. It might change Tom Brady's legacy. Might change Bill Belichick's legacy and spell his end a little faster. Maybe Garoppolo ends up being the young lover that Bill Belichick always wanted, instead of this lousy lady that he's dating.
Him on TMZ's got a lot of young lovers out there. So
there's no doubt to me that like that. Obviously, ego played a role. I agree with that, but I do think like winning solves a lot of those problems. And players, especially players who are already multimillionaires, care about legacy to some degree otherwise, or the ones that the Seahawks would want on their team.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the Mariners, they have this opportunity potentially. First off, I guess first question is, do you think this is the team? Like, because to me, the argument against selling out is that I don't think this team is really the team. I don't think this is a championship caliber team. And I don't think there's one bat away. Like, I think they're 3 or 4 bats away. And so that's like, to me, that's like, yes, you have all these prospects, but unless you can figure out a way to go get a whole, and Jerry DiPoto, who I do think should be fired, but he now has the impossible task of trying to acquire 4 batters without any payroll flexibility that we know of for sure. I'm sure there's some more now that they're successful, but we don't actually know. So
I'm curious why you think the GM should. I think giving the hand given the restrictions he's had to deal with, I think he's done a great job. I mean, like, I was even last year going, why are they getting rid of Eugenio Suarez? And then he's benched by Cincinnati this year. And then you're like,
you mean Arizona?
Yeah, or that's right. And yeah, so I think they've all the trades have looked pretty good. There's just certain things that, like, again, as fans, we have no knowledge of this stuff, but there's got to be, like, trades that almost happen or things that almost happen, or, like, this guy just doesn't want to go to Seattle because for 3 months of the year, the home runs are going to stay in the park or whatever.
He's got... So my beef against this idea that he's got some handcuffs on him is the Mariners were the 18th ranked team in payroll last year, and they're the 17th ranked team in payroll this year. Like, he didn't get a significant increase, but he's not like at a bigger disadvantage this year than in previous years. And I think that's they had to cut salary, but it's also But they had to cut. No, but it's not. It's restrictions that everyone's facing. By the way, like 2 years ago, the highest salary in baseball was $340 million. This year, it's $309 million. Like, everybody has had to cut back as kind of like a measure to. And I'm not into this idea.
No.
I'm not into this idea of like counting the owner's pocketbooks.
Sure, yeah.
I think with the amount of time he's had and the resources he's had, I think Jerry DiPoto should have put a better product on the field. To me, it's like it's basically irrelevant unless they. I mean, I understand if they go out and win a championship this year.
Yeah,
he's gonna keep his job. But I like, to me,
you're right. It's not the team this year. There's still 3 big. And their superstars are not playing like superstars either. Like, if Julio was having an average Julio season, we'd probably be in a better position also. But yeah, it's frustrating, and again, it's like, I think you're more than a casual fan where everyone's like, cut Ty France and bring up Locklear, and you're like, okay, we're just replacing the guy with another version of the same guy. And so a lot of this stuff is like, what's actually available and what can we actually get with our resources? Because even our prospects are still kind of hopeful prospects that a team probably doesn't value super highly yet.
Yeah,
we're not going to be able to, this guy in Chicago, the center fielder. And it's like, well, he's only been active for 60 games a year, and I don't know if that's then you're gonna have to pay center fielder prices for a guy when we already have a center fielder.
Sure.
So, like, there's a lot of semantics that it's just oversimplification, and so I have a lot of empathy toward. I mean, still fuck them and fire them and boil them in a river of lava, but
I do have a guy, by the way, that's actually a free agent right now who I don't think anyone's talking about. Who I don't think
is he playing down in Mexico, or is
he's not? It's not Trevor Bauer. Don't get too excited there. Your hero is not who I'm talking about. There's a guy named Brandon Belt who played.
He's innocent, and I demand now. Yeah.
Brandon Belt played all of his career until last year with the San Francisco Giants, and now he's in 2023. He played with the Toronto Blue Jays and had like a pretty good year, and then just didn't get a contract, and maybe he's waiting for a team to come along. That's a guy who's free. I mean, essentially, you're going to probably have to pay him some amount of money, but like, a guy who's not going to cost you prospects. He also might not be interested in playing baseball anymore. He could be functionally retired. I believe he's won some championships with San Francisco, so maybe he doesn't feel like he has to improve his legacy in any way. But yeah, that's like, to me, a team that's 4 pieces away from winning a championship is not the team that the front office should be selling out. Now, if there's guys at the deadline,
there is no selling out in baseball either. Like there's more of like NBA tanking, but like, yeah, I don't know that you can go all in because it's still.
Well,
I mean, like
you could
the
trade a bunch of
Padres
prospects.
tried. I mean, yeah, but that's tried, and it's unless you're the Yankees, it really doesn't work.
Yeah,
Like the Padres had like one of the best lineups, and then they sucked. Like,
yeah, that's people want the Mariners. Some people want the Mariners to trade as many
that's a more
prospects as it
exciting
takes.
option than floundering, and
Sure.
you're like, at least do something, but. It's silly. I mean, it goes back to like what did that giant press conference debacle where they're like, if we just win 55% of
Yeah.
our games, and you're like,
54% famously.
whatever. Yeah, like logistically, it's a bad thing to say out loud, but
Yeah.
I get what they're trying to do.
I remember hearing from David Locke, speaking of Seattle radio legends, 45 minutes ago when we were talking about your dad. David Locke's the guy I loved. He was like the first guy that introduced analytics to Seattle sports radio. And he said that the Mariners are content at the time, $90 million payroll, winning 90 games, 2.5 million people coming through the turnstiles. So 90, 2.5. They're fine with that. And it seems like that has never changed. Like, the problem is they've been really shitty instead of winning 90 games every year. If they won 90 games every year, you'd be sniffing at a championship every now and then. But what they're doing instead is winning, 90 games every 4 years. That might not even get you into the playoffs.
Again, there's ramifications from the previous regime. I mean, all the bad trades we used to go all in, or we traded.
I think the Eric Bedard.
Adam Jones is the example. Of
Yeah,
like,
that was for Eric Bedard. I think that the trade that brought Cliff Lee here was a good example of going all in, but then the trade that sent him out was also an example of how, if you go trade for a guy, you can trade him the next year quite often and make back some of what you gave up, especially if he's theoretically more.
One of my favorite things is playing a video game and being GM and like trying to get the best team. And like, I've spent hours. I think up all the newspaper headlines when I trade a guy away,
Mike Hansen, he didn't do great in reference to Eric Bedard? Is that what that was in reference to? I assume it was. Yeah, Eric Bedard was not.
Or your set again. He was talking about.
Eric Bedard was not incredible here. I think it's just to me what I would like to see, and we did a long, boring episode on it, is them go make some moves that are not as sexy. Like, instead of going and getting Vlad Guerrero, go get JD Martinez, is the guy that I've talked about. He's like basically as good as Vlad Guerrero is for 2024. And will cost you way less because his salary is higher, but not that much higher, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyway,
Although
okay.
Vlad, AL hitter of the week, I think, right?
Okay, he's bringing it back then. I didn't see that.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's like, I don't know if they're letting the pitchers cheat again or something, but it feels like league-wide numbers are down for all hitters again, and.
Well, they still have the strikeout problem, and I don't know. I mean, we've talked about.
You mean firing the hitting coach didn't change everything?
John McGrath, the legendary Tacoma sports writer, did the open mic. Oh wait, shit. Oh no, I didn't see this before.
Oh, I see.
John McGrath.
Tell you.
No
Yeah.
shit. Oh my god, we got to get John McGrath on the podcast to talk about this. That's crazy. I mean, first off, I know of a couple sports writers who have done comedy, by the way, that I'm like, I would be interested to just talk to them about what that's like. Because I wanted to be a sports writer originally, and then I was so bad at that I do comedy now. So,
Wow. I'd like to see your sports writing. Can't be much worse. Jason Churchill is my Mariners guy. That's the guy.
I
like
used to write for Jason Churchill, and I will say,
Oh, really?
after writing for him, he is not my guy.
Okay. I'd like to
very
be
decidedly.
turned on to some new people so we can exchange that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was like a big Fangraphs guy for a long time. I don't know who I would like specifically read that's out there now. I know I mean, the tough thing is a lot of the guys that used to be great got hired by baseball teams, like Dave Cameron and Jeff Sullivan were both really great, and they're both
Funny.
employees of baseball teams now. And
I
that
started
like
following this PFF guy on Twitter, and he just got hired by Carolina Panthers.
oh
So he and I would DM every couple. He ran the PFF sports betting podcast, and
gotcha.
I thought it was more fascinating to listen to people who are actually trying to be right instead of just give hot takes. Like I listen
Sure.
to more gambling related because they're like putting their money down and saying like, we're gonna try and win games and money and stuff. And so, I mean, he ended up following me back, and he just liked my comedy for some reason. But I started DMing him like, man, please don't make me become a Carolina Panthers fan. Like this is the worst news ever. But it is. You bring up a good point. Is like anybody who's knowledgeable about anything gets snapped up real
Yeah,
quick.
well, especially in the analytics era, like those guys that I think are really good at that specific thing, which is the bent that I had and the bent that it's like who I care about, those type of writers. A lot of, and that's true in football. It's been going on for a long time. There's a dude, his Twitter handle was like Sean from Seebeck, and now he's like been on multiple teams as a consultant. I think he was like the Ravens consultant for a while. Are you familiar with this guy?
No, but I mean that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's play this home run
Have
game.
you? Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
What's your fantasy football? I mean, if you're talking like a GM, but what's your? Do you have any championship belts to back it up, or?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I've won a couple championships. I would say I'm not very committed to fantasy football. I started playing fantasy football in 1996. My dad like had me take over his team. Basically, it was like, a thing we could do together. We were like faxing lineups in. That's how long ago it was. And I at the time I didn't understand draft value.
You have been alive a long time.
I drafted. We got the first overall pick, and I just was like, It was like the hipster pick of that year. I was like Terrell Owens, but it was like after his second year in the NFL. So like he's still. I mean, obviously he became a Hall of Fame player.
Right.
He still had a pretty good season, but there was like the people who had the second pick had to be thrilled that some dumbass 10-year-old picked Terrell Owens before. I had I was in a dynasty fantasy baseball league that I won one year, and I play in a league with a buddy of mine that's like you draft a bunch of different teams, and basically like we just use betting odds to and I've won. I mean, listen, if the IRS is listening, I've lost money every time, but like I'm profitable on that league for
that's
sure.
your comedy career, IRS. That's his comedy career.
Football, I'm in a dynasty league that I care about a fair amount. That's like I took second 1 year and third. It's only been around for 2 years. I actually had Jamar Chase in the DeMar Hamlin game, and we had to like as a league decide because that was our championship. We like had to decide how we were going to handle it, and I ended up losing. And then last year I took third, I think. But yeah, I mean, I've done okay. I used to write about fantasy baseball for fantasy football for a website called.
Fantasy baseball is tough with 160 games.
It's much harder, yeah.
I was looking at their schedule too, and I'm like, 6 nights a week you're playing this fucking game. Like,
Yeah.
it's gotta be hard.
So Fantasy Football Jungle, I wrote for. The dude that owned it was named. He used the name Ryan Whetstone but he never wrote anything. But he has like another last name that I'm not going to give out, I guess. But anyways, he had this website called Fantasy Football Jungle, where me and a couple of guys I still talk to, by the way, wrote there. And then he was the first guy that I ever saw that had a database that would aggregate mock drafts. So it would like, now you see that stuff where they're like this. So this was like, that was pretty cool. I wrote for Beer Graphs, which was an analytics offshoot of Fangraphs with a guy named Enosaurus. I did a little bit of like legit sports writing. I was the first ever featured columnist for the Seahawks and the Mariners on Bleacher Report back when it was like a citizen driven, like citizen journalism. Now it's like just like anybody else, but
Right.
And actually, I lost a job to Rob Staten, he's a guy who I've, by the way, held a fucking grudge against for no reason because there's no way he knows who I am. But I was like, that piece of shit took that job from me. It would have been working for CBS. Like, dude, my life would have sucked. I think about it now. Being a sports writer is such a grind. Comedy's a grind, but you can like take time off whenever you want. You could choose to take 2 weeks off of comedy, and you can also go 8 days
Comedy
straight.
will choose to give you 2 weeks off too. Yeah.
That happens sometimes also, but football, it's like you are just there. You're an employee of a business, and you just have to be there at practice, at games. You're traveling, and I'm like, my life would suck so much worse if I was a sports writer, and sports writing would be worse off for it.
You know, I think about like the newspaper people, the people who have to go into the press conference, and I'm like, what do you even ask? Like, because sometimes you're like, what are these dumb questions? And then you're like, well, you know, he's not going to answer anything strategic or interesting. So like, how's the guy doing with his foot? Pretty good. Okay, cool. I'm getting paid for this. And you're like, what are we doing here? You know?
Mike Hansen graduated with Rob Rang, by the way, of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, if you want to see Rob Rang every now and then. Those, by the way,
back when Field Goals was a really popular Seahawks blog, and they used to have like mock draft contests, and I basically got permission to make like the top prize 10 free tickets to Tacoma Comedy Club or something like that.
Yeah.
I was always doing dumb shit like that for Adam. I was like, I'm part of the team, you know, I'm like helping out. And so, just buying Adam's love early and often.
There's a guy that came from there named Dan Viens. I had him on this podcast. He's really good. He does a Seahawks podcast called Seahawks Forever, and it's really good. It's not like super analytics focused. He's definitely more of like, he gets into that stuff a little bit, but it's more like really well thought out opinions, like really thought out takes, like not. I'm selling it like that, like reasonable cold takes or whatever you said earlier.
Yeah, reasonable takes on hot button issues. Or something.
Yeah, he's a really good one. I don't know if there's like a great Fangraphs used to have a baseball one that's like, so Jeff Sullivan and Dave Cameron had a podcast, or they would do a little bit of podcasting together. Carson Sestouli was this dude who was, to me, one of the best writers, period. I owned a book of his, a book of aphorisms, which is not what you normally expect out of a sports writer, that was called, it was called Ejaculations of the publisher was called Mitzvah Chap. So hold on a second. I'm going to get the actual name because it's Carson Sestouli. Ejaculations is a crazy thing to put into a search engine, but it was called Spirited Ejaculations of a New Enthusiast, and it was just a book of like his aphorisms. He's a big fan of this dude named Emil Chorin, who has this book. I have this great picture of my daughter. That he has a book called The Trouble with Being Born. That's like all these just like really pessimistic, like sayings and poems and shit like that. And I have a picture of my daughter at like 1.5 years old, standing, holding the book with The Trouble with Being Born. That's great. But yeah, man, I don't know. It's like tough now because the PFF guys are pretty good. But that's all football. Like, that's what I'm like.
I like Jason he just has a podcast where he kind of talks through people's hot take. I just want a reasonable listen that like actually knows something and isn't going to go, fire these people and get to, and you're like, I just want to know stuff so I sound like a smart person when I see Casey at the food fair, like I mean, obviously they don't have the prospects to compete. I mean, I look at this guy. Another year or two with the team, maybe, like if they have a better performing season, I think the off season will be the spot, but I mean, Ryan Bliss looked pretty good at second
he had
base.
points.
Again, I think like everyone's trying to trade for first baseman, or I think we just need 2 outfielders. Like our outfield, what's his name? Mitch Garver or something? The guy who we played in left field has been surprisingly athletic and really, really good out there.
He's the DH/catcher. That's the guy you're talking about. Yeah.
Oh no, there's
you're thinking of Haniger?
Luke Raley or something. Maybe?
Oh, Luke Raley. Yeah, Luke Raley. Yeah, Luke Raley is faster than he looks on paper.
He had a triple, and he had a higher MPH than Ryan Bliss or something like that. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But there's still like a few balls that I'm like, oh, if we had just like a slightly above average left fielder or right fielder, then someone would have got that ball, because like, again, Canzone, a good bench guy, depending on the splits, like we've got a lot of the auxiliary pieces. We just need a superstar that is actually being a superstar, and then 1 or 2 more,
Well, what's interesting about the three guys or two of the three guys you just mentioned, but I'm going to mention a third one is people were up in arms over the Paul Sewald trade last year, and I would say like, like an aging
I feel that
reliever,
one, but yeah.
an aging. Well, but let me tell you, the three guys the Mariners got in that trade is Dominic Canzone,
Right.
Josh Rojas, and Ryan
Yeah.
Bliss. Like,
Yeah.
these are guys who are contributing in 2024.
And you
so-
fill 3 spots instead of 1 spot every other day.
Right.
Like it's really more impactful. But now we had good bullpen. I mean, this happens to every team, but it's
Sure.
just like the injuries, and then we're like, we got 5 amazing prospects plus 2 guys and then they get hurt, and then Hancock's hurt, and then
I think the
and then
Mariners
Mitch
need help.
Haniger is a full-time outfielder, and you're going, these knees aren't going to keep up. What do we do?
I think the Mariners need help at every position. I think they could get an infielder, an outfielder, a first
Yeah.
baseman. They really probably need a backup catcher, to be honest with you, because
I know-
part of the deal, Cal Raleigh is like playing every fucking day. Like
Yeah.
if Cal Raleigh gets injured, and
yeah,
at the
that's
rate he's
good.
playing,
Yeah.
he will get injured.
Yeah.
It's going to be bad. Yeah. And
real
I
bad.
even think, like I said this and Alex disagreed on this podcast, but I think they're like sneakily have an opportunity to maybe acquire a starting pitcher and have it not be bad. Oh, Brian Dennis. By the way, Brian
Security.
security at Tacoma Comedy Club, the man. We need more brothers on the team. I got to say, Brian Dennis came up to me in front of a comedian's wife. He didn't realize maybe at the moment, and was just like talking shit about the headliner. And I'm like sitting there like trying to give him every fucking like I say. He wasn't like saying anything horrible, by the way, but it was just like enough where I'm like some guy. I don't even want to get into it, but he it was like very uncomfortable for me. I love Brian Dennis. If I ever get famous, Brian Dennis is on the Junior Mafia. Like, he's gonna be my security on the road. He's gonna be my the manager that I have come in and count.
You see the
fucking
video
tickets.
of Rick Ross and his security getting into a
I
fight?
did, yeah.
Pretty fun.
He's the Rick Ross in that scenario, also on side.
Brian Dennis might have a job opening soon. Who knows?
Okay, let's do the home run game.
All
so
right.
It's very easy. I'm going to tell you, I have 3 players pulled up, all longtime Mariners, so it should be somewhat in your wheelhouse. You can talk through why you may come to a decision. You can talk through you don't have to like answer. It's not rapid fire.
Sure. Okay.
And we'll end it on that. And since it's guys that you should know pretty well, and you're stupid, I have 3 of them queued up. So, yeah, there we go. I can fight. Don't worry, you'll be safe. Brian golfs. He's got everything going for him. Is Casey's dad sort of famous? Also, no. Very decidedly not. Okay, so number 1 is longtime Mariner, beloved longtime Mariner, Jay Buhner. And you're just guessing how many home runs he had in his career.
With the Mariners or with all?
Just in his career. And so I'll tell you that the evolution of this game is at the beginning when we started doing it, the person quizzing the other person would give them some information. We don't do that anymore, but since you're not seasoned in this very stupid game, I'm going to tell you, he played 15 seasons, 14 of them.
Yeah.
He played for the Mariners, 2 with the Yankees, but obviously one of those he split. He was like traded to the Mariners.
While I'm thinking
midseason.
about it, do you have? There's a lot of rumblings about like, stop with the nostalgia, stop doing Buhner Buzz Cut Night, let this team find a new identity. Do you buy into like Buhner Buzz Cut Night's like a tradition like no other?
I don't mind Buhner Buzzcut Night. I don't mind the ones that are like tied to a specific player. I do think it's pretty pathetic that we're talking about like a 30-year-old season still. I mean, even 2001, we don't talk about that much. It's 95 over and over and over. And by the way, like, it was an amazing moment. It's a moment that meant so much to my
We have
childhood.
so many new memories to celebrate that it's weird that we keep going back to the only one.
But I do think it's like, first off, the Mariners marketing team, Kevin Martinez is like I'm going to say friend. I think he'd be okay with me saying friend, but I think comedians would be like, that's not your friend, you fucking loser. Why would you say that? We get along very well. He's come to a comedy show. I've interviewed him twice. He's been so overly generous. I actually just found I had a press credential to walk into his office from 2015. I was like, damn, 9 years ago that I talked to Kevin Martinez. They do an amazing job of marketing that team, and it's almost like to the detriment of the final product, because they're like, we're going to sell a lot of tickets just on these fucking commercials. We don't need to field a good team. Like, the commercials are so great. We can just like rest on our laurels.
I'm gonna go with 250, but I think it's higher than that.
Yeah, pretty
But
good.
that's my
Pretty
little
good.
base
This is
level.
not a bad guess. I would say when I gave you the 15 years, you probably should have had a little bit of a clue, because he had a couple big years in there. A couple, like a lot of years that weren't incredible. He had 3 straight years with 40-plus home runs, though, from 1995 to 1997.
That's probably making it up. So what are we?
310 home runs.
Okay.
So that's not a bad guess. I will say I've missed by significantly more than that.
What's the standard of like? What's the club that everyone's trying to get into? Like the 300 club or the 500 club? Or
Well, it used to be, I think, like in the 1970s, 300 would have gotten you into the Hall of Fame pretty reliably. I think after that, it was the 400 club, but then so many people joined that I think 500 is kind of the new benchmark. And a lot of guys are going to get there, but also a lot of guys are probably going to get left out because they didn't
I
do
know
steroids.
the shot is only from the chest up, but it looks like you're close to the 500 club as well. So
Thank you for saying 500 and not something that was actually much closer. Oh,
you're
my
supposed to
God.
exaggerate for comedy.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. You guessed high, which was nice for that joke. Which is funny that that's nicer, actually, to be like, oh, now it's obvious he was joking, and not like, ooh, actually, you're inching closer to a real milestone.
I'm gonna guess you and Jay Buhner have the same amount of home runs and weight, but
Next one, 2-time Mariner, actually. I think just 2 times. Part of the 2001 team, not part of the 1995 team, though he played with the Mariners 92-93. A guy who was 3rd in the MVP voting in 2001, and in my opinion, got robbed. I think he was probably the most valuable player in baseball, despite the fact that we've learned that he was just dripping with steroids, very likely, in that period of time. Can you guess who I'm talking about?
Brett Boone.
Yes, Brett Boone. How many home runs did Brett Boone have in
I
his
just
career?
heard some people making fun of him or whatever, just for being the steroid king.
He also had a thing, by the way, which we don't have time. I got to put my kids to bed in a moment, but he had I was walking into the Mariners offices to interview Kevin Martinez on the same day as Brett Boone was going on like a crazy alt-right rant on social media. And I think that I was just like, holy shit. And I think just like when a guy plays in Seattle, we all just stupidly assume that he shares the politics. And you're like, oh no, this guy's from wherever he's from. And it's probably significantly different there.
It is funny that
El Cajon, California, of course. This
rich guy loves liberal politics
This
and
dark red district.
He loves having half his paycheck disappear. My dad and I were walking through the casino, and he saw like an advertisement. He's like, "Oh, Jim Brewer, that might be fun." I go, "Well, he's a little off the rail," and he goes, "Ah, shit, really?" And I go, "Yeah." So, So Brett Boone.
By the way, played 14 total seasons.
There you go.
He played 7 with the Mariners, 5 with the Cincinnati
But
Reds.
I'm gonna guess under 310, even though, because I'm gonna say Buhner surprised me, but with higher numbers. But Boone only probably had a couple steroid years to carry him, so we're gonna lock in our answer at. What if we just go 250 for all of them? 250.
Okay, since you went 250 on that one, you made this strategy pretty damn good. 252 home runs for Brett Boone, which actually, by the way, I'm not sure, but it might be the closest anyone's ever gotten on this game. I'm going to check. I know Alex got a 3 the other, somewhat recently, I think, but I think 2 might be the closest we've ever gotten. Yeah. I'm very bad at this game, by the way, so you're really
I'm the
crushing
worst. I'm just guessing the same number for all of them, probably.
Yeah, well, I think you should not
Unless you
guess
start
that for this
doing
next
like,
one.
unless you start doing a bench player.
Our
Alvin
final
Davis.
our final player was not born in El Cajon, California. He was actually born in Wurzburg, Germany. You know, Wurzburg, Germany. Played at Tacoma Community College and was drafted by the Mariners in the 8th round in 1984. Comes up, he was drafted in the 8th round, 1984. I don't think he gets signed, and then ends up in the getting drafted by Baltimore in 1985. Comes up with the Yankees in 1989, and becomes a Mariners staple at a point. Mike Blowers. So 11 total seasons, 6 with the Mariners. And by the way, these are all Kingdom Mariners, which is important to Yankees, 3 years, a year with the Dodgers, a year with Oakland. And then my memory is, and I'm going to pull it up, but I think he played a year in Japan. And I'll be curious to see how Mike Blowers did in Japan. And we can use that as a little Easter egg while he played for the Hanshin Tigers, I believe.
Do those home runs count?
Not counting
my
those
total?
ones towards
Okay.
this.
Well, you told me not to guess 250.
That leaves a lot of room on either side.
I'm gonna bet the under. What? 73 and a half.
I mean, you
With a
might be the
ground rule double.
It's possible you're the best home run game player this game has ever seen. As long as they're Mariners from the time you watched baseball a lot. 78 home runs for Mike Blowers, not including the 10 home runs he hit playing for the, I'm going to pull up get the official, I think it's the Hanshin Tigers, the 1999 Hanshin Tigers. He hit 10 home runs for them, but 78 home runs. You came very close, 4.5 away.
Wow. Yeah. that half really got me into the prize money.
You threw
So-
two absolute darts. All right. You're what? Andrew J. Rivers on all social media, right?
Yeah.
I'm Casey McLean Comedy. I'm going to play the music and
I
I'll talk to
accidentally
you.
wrote S, but my eyesight, it looks like an A sometimes.
Oh, you did? Wow. Andrew J. Rivers. Wow. You are really just not the smartest guy in the world. All right.